Hare Krishna. Continuing on with our series of 50 years in Krishna consciousness. As I've done in the past, I'm pausing a little, maybe one decade at a time, for some reflections on looking back at the time that I just described. What are some thoughts, in retrospect? So I'm not sure if these reflections, they're kind of social commentaries, I'm not sure if they're helpful to anyone, but the intention is just to look back at the time, which I just described in previous talks, and to see if there are lessons that hopefully we can learn, mostly for the benefit of future generations. So first I will offer my obeisances to you all. Vanchakopatarubhyascha kripasinnavevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskacha De Satarani. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So previously we talked about the first stage of ISKCON's development, the first 10, 15 years, where we were going just full steam ahead, focused on the physical development of the society, building all the facilities, the books, the temples, the deities, getting results. It was very important in those years. We used to do, probably crazy stuff like, of course we had, measuring the books, the amount of books done, and they used to have even Sika points for how many new devotees made or something, So physical results, they were very important at that time. And it was basically what it meant to be Krishna conscious. And but then now, into the 90s, a second, more complex stage ensues, and where there's more emphasis on actually holding it all together, what we've created, holding it all together, protecting and defending what we had, So events that transpired, they forced us to probe our philosophy more deeply, which is a good thing. Because we had seen enough examples of human frailty and institutional disputes and internal conflicts that we could no longer assume that nothing could go wrong. I think or many of us, our youthful sense of invincibility was significantly deflated, if not completely lost. So it was a humbling decade. I don't say we became humble, but humbling by the events that transpired. The 90s was a time of, ISKCON family breaking up. Of course, this had started earlier on, gradually, but by now, it was clear that we are not all going to stick together. And that was shocking, and it was scary. We'd always had different points of view, devotees fighting with each other about varieties of things. But to leave ISKCON because of it, well, I just don't think many of us ever thought that would happen. I didn't, Many devotees at that time in these years who had been loved and very respected in ISKCON and who had done enormous service, went their own way. Like Tripurari Maharaj, Jadharani, Jagat Guru, or Nrsimha Maharaj, and many, many others left our family. And that was very sad and difficult and challenging. You know, like any family breakup or a divorce, everyone has their rationale for their actions. And at times like that, we tend to forget about the good times relished together and rather focus more on the difficulties and the shortcomings, because that makes it possible to make the desired break. No doubt, it must have been difficult. I've never really talked to anybody about that, but I think it must have been very difficult for devotees who left to make that decision. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but once that decision was made, naturally it would be important to dig firmly into their own points of view and criticisms of ISKCON, you know, in order to continue to justify the decision to leave. And of course, any difficulties that were going on in ISKCON would become food for reinforcing their position. And also for the leaders and devotees who remained in ISKCON, it also continued to be important for us to justify our decisions and our actions. So when we heard negative reports received from, you know, things going on in various mats, it would be useful in reinforcing our own stance on things. But suffice to say that there was a lot of defending going on at that time on all sides. And I think it's important to look at this tendency to defend and how it plays out in our own lives and in our mission. It is identified as one of the 4 primary drives in a human being, which we are encouraged to regulate and control, you know, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And, you know, it's easy to see what's happening with the first 3. You know, am I eating too much? Am I sleeping too much? But defending, you know, that can be more subtle, but it is just as powerful as the other 3, and maybe even more. So, you know, we may need to give more thought, you know, what it means and how that tendency is within us. You know, Srila Prabhupada, sometimes he referred to, he said, eating, sleeping, mating, and fearing, you know, as if they're the same thing, defending and fearing. And I think what we saw, especially in these years, is that everyone was afraid. Afraid ISKCON would fall apart, afraid I might have made the wrong decision by leaving, or afraid Srila Prabhupada would not be pleased, or in so many ways, just afraid. And in retrospect, you know, if we're looking for lessons, I mean, that's the idea behind this, is not to say who's the good guys and the bad guys. It's just we're looking for lessons from this decade. If only we could try to be more honest and more open about our fears, you know, rather than just, you know, defending, being defensive. And be more willing to try to listen to each other without defending, to at least try to come to a point of respectfully agreeing to disagree. I mean, that's not to say that no one tried to do that. Of course people did. You know, there were efforts, many efforts, but it could have been done a lot more. There could have been, we could have tried harder. But for myself, leaving ISKCON, Well, it's never crossed my mind, despite whatever has gone on, continues to go on. I just always think of how Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada gave his life blood at his age to build this institution. And how he gave us absolutely everything we have. He gave us life. He gave us everything of value. And in return, he asked only one thing, really. He asked one thing. He said, try to maintain what he created. He saw it as an important vehicle for bhakti. And he asked us, please try to maintain what he created. And so for me, that's just, fixed in my brain that this is what Prabhupada asked, even if we're not doing it well, even if there's so much that needs to be done, we have to keep trying. I'll read a little excerpt of a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to one devotee. He said, now we have, by Krishna's grace, built up something significant in the shape of this ISKCON. And we are all one family. And sometimes there may be disagreement and quarrel, but we should not go away. These inebrities can be adjusted by the cooperative spirit, tolerance, and maturity. So I request you to kindly remain in the association of our devotees and work together. The test of our actual dedication and sincerity to serve the spiritual master will be in this mutual cooperative spirit to push on this movement and not make factions and deviate. So, this is what Prabhupada hoped for. This is what he encouraged. So I think if we can, the first priority is always to try to support and to contribute and to help to improve the society as best we can. It may be many generations for it to manifest truly as we'd like to see it, but it is worth the effort. However, I acknowledge that there are many who have chosen a different path. Everyone has had different life experiences in ISKCON, and some of them quite bitter. So they have their own reasons. And even if I feel it's not what Srila Prabhupada would have wanted, I still have to allow that everyone is entitled to follow their own path. Even Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, now I've told you everything, you decide what to do. So it's not really our place or my place to judge others or try to micromanage another person's journey. Even if I think someone's wrong. I mean, we might try to convince others or share our own viewpoint if we have the skill and if we have a pure intention in doing so. And of course, there's times when, you just have to call a spade if something is just absolutely, totally off. But regardless, we should still always at least try to be a well-wisher to everyone, not just those who agree with me. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said in a beautiful prayer, he said, Gurudev, O Lord and Master, please invest in me the power to honor all living beings properly. Only then Well, I sing the holy name in great ecstasy, free of offenses. So after so many years, it is obvious that making mutual moral accusations against each other, it just doesn't help resolve things. And diversity is now, in this decade, and now we know diversity is inevitable. And we need to accept it. We no longer have an exclusive market on bhakti. There's so many manifestations in the world today. So how are we going to deal with it? Where do we go from here? And I would say perhaps we should consider that there is significant positive value in unity. That somehow, if in some reasonable way, Vaishnavas could unite, that would be the most beneficial. All Vaishnavas, even Sri Vaishnavas, there's so many. Srila Prabhupada wanted that. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wanted that. He has right down the road in his mat, Chaitanya Mat, there's the four, there's deities of the acharyas of the four sampradayas. This desire for some unity. In a demoniac world that we live in, people who are trying and who are following to some extent need to work together, So if we believe that there is very important value in attaining that, then, it seems we should try for it. It may be that's a service for future generations. But as preachers, we tell the world, if you accept Krishna, this will bring peace to the world. And that is true. But if Vaishnavas don't have peace amongst themselves, that is just embarrassing and makes us look like hypocrites, and just like so many other religious groups. And not only in terms of public image, but in terms of strength that comes with unity and in terms of being authentic. So it seems the most natural desire is to promote unity. At present, we see the world, oh my God, there's no unity. It's very sad, a sad state of affairs. It's just so much needed, and we do have the formula. But the formula, it has to become a lived experience. It has to become an example, a shared experience. So I don't know. Now, whatever has been done in the past, it can't be undone. Certainly, mistakes were made on all sides. Now, what do? We can try to put aside history. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, forget the past that sleeps, and, try to be friends. And by that, I don't mean we should merge into one group and all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, if you know what I mean. We can't be naive or sentimental. There is a very definite need to protect the ISKCON institution and to protect Srila Prabhupada's legacy, to protect his style and his mood and his emphasis. And to do that, we need to clearly understand ourselves, how we may differ philosophically and in practice with other people and other groups. And we also need to be aware that there are people who are against ISKCON or even want to take its assets. But despite knowing these things, it shouldn't stop us from trying to create some level of unity. Or it shouldn't stop us from respecting other Vaishnavas. or other spiritualists. I mean, of course, a condition for unity requires some basic appreciation for Srila Prabhupada's unique position as the Samstapaka Acharya, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, and the acknowledgement that Srila Prabhupada is not just one of many gurus. Srila Prabhupada displayed astonishing empowerment in bringing Krishna consciousness to the Western world and in fulfilling the mission of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He did what had never been done before, and this has to be recognized. Even mundane scholars can see that. And that does not mean that other gurus are not great devotees. It is not meant to slight anyone else. Not at all. You know, even Srila Sridhar Maharaj, who Srila Prabhupada said was a very great devotee, he admittedly said, you know, we are all eating the remnants of Bhaktivedanta Swami. That's just an acknowledgement of the empowerment of Srila Prabhupada. And to accept that doesn't diminish anyone else or lessen the service of anyone else. Nor does it mean that, as some have said ridiculously, that you can only make advancement in ISKCON. It just means that we need to keep Lord Chaitanya's mission alive as best we can for the benefit of ourselves and the world. Just imagine if all sampradayas were to work together, how wonderful and how powerful that would be. The world, you know, needs armies of Vaishnavas, saintly people who want to push back the dark forces of the asuras that are ruling now. So it seems we should do all we can to establish better relationships with all Vaishnavas. This will probably be more easily done by the next generations. Less prejudice. But, excuse me. After watching for many years how things have played out over all the years since these times, it seems that we need to learn to be more patient with each other, not so quick to judge, not so quick to denounce others. You know, our life paths are often quite winding with many twists and turns and ups and downs. And we have seen many times how the tables can just turn again and again. And sometimes those who we thought were really great turned out to be not so great, you know. And sometimes those we never even noticed turned out to be very wonderful. You know, and sometimes people went through difficulties and made wrong choices and then later turned their life around and started to do wonderful things, you know, and the opposite also has happened. Sometimes people who went away from ISKCON, they returned, you know, so we need to allow for the door to swing both ways. And sometimes we need to recognize that people just need some patience and kindness from us. Anyway, as I described in the class talking about this time, this decade brought up a number of philosophical debates, like the fall of the jiva issue and many others. And again, if we're looking for lessons from the decade, it seems that we need to learn to disagree better. I mean, there's just no doubt that there will be many more debates and conflicts in the future. And we need to learn how to deal with it better. Because sometimes the way we dealt with people and with issues in the past, it created more problems and separatism and discouragement and loss of devotees sometimes. So we need to improve. Fortunately, nowadays, there is plenty of information to help us do better. Experts in conflict have identified a hierarchy of ways in which we disagree, explaining from the very worst way to disagree to the very best. And on the lowest end is name calling. I mean, how often have we heard the name calling thing? And then the next worst way is ad hominem attacks, where you just attack somebody's character and not the substance of an argument. And I think we've all seen plenty of that. And there's also a hierarchy of thinking skills, the way we think, that goes along with these different ways of arguing. And again, the lowest being, well, it's called the cult leader, and the way that person thinks is that I'm just always right. My thoughts are gospel. And, our authority structure can really set us up for this type of thinking. I'm the authority, I'm the GBC, I'm the TP, I'm the husband, I'm the whatever. But it's considered a low way of thinking. Or the politician comes next, and that's the kind of thinking that, well, they're just wrong, and we're right. And, you preach to your own side and prosecute the other side. Or, a little bit up is the contrarian, the person that, the way he thinks is to just seek out every flaw in the other, but is blind to his own flaws. So, unfortunately, we've seen some of these lower tactics. They're identified just in the mundane world. And it's clear that there's better ways. It's said the best way of disagreeing is to actually really refute an argument, properly. Srila Prabhupada was so expert at that. And the best thinking style is called being a learner. That I want to be challenged. Actually this is Vaisheshika, if you've ever heard him speaking, his motto is, I live to be corrected. That's the learner. That's the higher level. It's what people respect that. And, we have seen the damaging effects of using these immature tactics or having these immature ways of thinking, that we saw devotees who became too harsh, too offensive to each other on either side of any argument. They all suffered many bad reactions, and many are no longer with us. As one smart person said, it's easier to fight for one's principles than to actually live up to them. But the fact is that intelligent disagreement is the lifeblood of any thriving society. And if we want to thrive, we need to acquire the skills for intelligent disagreement. And sure, these are just mundane skills. And if we're really totally Krishna conscious, pure devotees, these abilities, they might just naturally manifest. But we see that so many of us are not at that point. So, skills can help. And mastering the art of listening, it's considered an important skill nowadays. This is what people out in the world expect. And historically, we have not been so good at that. There's a quote from Stephen Covey in regards to listening. And he said that most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They're either speaking or preparing to speak, or they're filtering everything through their own paradigms and reading their autobiography into other people's lives. That's interesting. I know I've done that when people are talking and you're thinking about the response. It's a skill that, we should desire to learn if we want to keep our ISKCON family together, or even just maintain healthy relationships, whether inside or outside or anywhere. And Srila Prabhupada was a very good listener. He was. And experts say that to disagree well, you must first understand well. And that means that we have to listen carefully, we have to read deeply, and we have to watch closely. And we need to grant our adversary some moral respect, give him the intellectual benefit of the doubt, have some sympathy for his motives, and participate empathically with another person's line of reasoning. I mean, yes, we're going to disagree on many things, but we can learn to do it better. I believe that. Because disagreements, I've seen it become toxic when we refuse to, look at another person, make eye contact or speak to them directly, or, we don't even try to find some middle ground, and often we tend to just fight each other from some safe distance of our separate islands of thought, or just ban those we disagree with. So what I'm talking about here, and I really hope it's not just boring, these are obviously not highly spiritual topics. It's simply a matter of learning decent human behavior, becoming more mature, acting more mature. Because if we think we can bypass human decency in our rush for transcendence, that is illusion. And now, it seems now more than ever, there is a great need to disagree better. With what we see now, Facebook, Twitter, this thing, people shouting at each other, name-calling, character assassinations. It's just so common, so easy, no fear of offense. It seems crucial to just want to be better people. So as devotees, although we may strongly hold a particular point of view, there's always a need for intellectual humility, in dealing with conflict or debate. And by that I mean to acknowledge and to accept that our intelligence is very limited. It will always be less than Krishna's. We can't and we don't know everything. We can use logic and reason to help prove our points, but it's not perfect. And we can use Shastra as a guidebook to prove our points, but it's not a manual. It's not black and white. And the point being that following Srila Prabhupada is not just, one straight line. It's more like a broad circle. And within the circle, one person may be at one side following Srila Prabhupada, and someone on another side of the following Srila Prabhupada. And there may be many angles of vision that can be right. We need to keep an open mind rather than make absolute statements about things that we have not fully realized yet. Personally, in seeing, observing the various conflicts of the decade, and ongoing, I've often wondered, do we really care about each other? Because sadly, I have seen that when a devotee differs in his viewpoint, or goes away, or joins another camp, too often, no one seems to care about them anymore. They become persona non grata. Is that how you say it? Unacceptable or unwelcome. Now, why is that? Was our former affection for them genuine? I mean, even if I strongly disagree with someone, and if we think someone's taken the wrong path, shouldn't it break our heart instead of, turning us away from them? Shouldn't we feel saddened? Or do we need to make others wrong in order to make ourselves feel right? I think it's very important to question ourselves again and again. Do I genuinely care about the well-being of others? Or do I tend to use people to build support for my own life, or for my team, or my views, or my project, my power? Especially when we have others working under us in some way. Do we like them only when they're useful to our own service? Or do I only show appreciation and value people who fit in with my own goals? Do I use people as tools to achieve my goals? I've seen that sometimes we treat each other like computer chips, appreciated only according to their specs and capacity to fit into certain roles and perform certain functions that will benefit the institution or the project or myself. And the ones that don't fit are not valued, Even if our goal is for Krishna's service, it's still likely to have a negative effect on people who are being used in this way. So we have to be so careful of mundane attitudes pervading our spiritual life. Personally, I see a very, very strong need for, I don't know who coined this term, but radical personalism. A visible expression of genuine care. And that's not just a program that you can institute. It can't just be something you write down on paper, but it's a natural personal attitude of someone who's following the process, that we have a change of vision and our heart becomes softened. And as Srila Prabhupada is such an example of the ever well-wisher. Because, what is the point of our practice if we are not people who care about each other? The future of ISKCON is dependent upon each of us learning to genuinely care, at least wanting to. I don't mean in a sentimental way, but as the practical manifestation of our philosophy, that we do begin to see Krishna in everyone's heart and to see the soul as his part. You know, we all know Bhagavad Gita, the humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision. Everyone. And Prabhupada says in the purport about that verse, he says that the supersoul is present in all bodies without distinction. So we need to unpack this in the context of our daily lives so that it's a lived experience. It's not just something we sprout, you know, and at least we should desire it, or at least be humble enough to admit that I don't really have that vision yet. So my vision is not perfect. And, you know, as I was hearing someone give a class about Srila Prabhupada's Pranam Mantra and how it expresses his mission so clearly, you know, what he came to do, nirvishesha shunyavadi vaska chadesatarane. That Prabhupada's, you know, mission is just massive. A massive idea to change the fundamental way that we see each other, when we see the world. And, you know, that it has to start with ourselves. You know, that impersonalism, it runs very, very deep. And it has to be consciously rooted out, you know, individually and institutionally. And anyway, the turbulence of the 90s, it was needed to teach many lessons and to humble us, well, at least to knock us down a few pegs, because through it became more apparent that many of us had you know, developed an attitude of arrogance that played out in a variety of ways, and still does. You know, that in our rush to grow spiritually in the pursuance of prema, we sometimes lose our humanity. And I don't know, as I've done in previous reflections, I've tried to identify, you know, certain patterns of behavior or syndromes or kanista attitudes that we need to watch out for ongoing into the future. You know, that in the early years, or for anyone that just comes to Krishna consciousness, you know, we receive so much knowledge from Srila Prabhupada. I would want to describe this as a syndrome that I will call the know-it-all syndrome. And meaning that, you know, when we come, we receive so much knowledge, and we're holding this newfound knowledge in our neophyte hands. And it can develop into an attitude of superiority. Just see all that I know, how great I am now. And we can begin to look down our nose at others and easily make blanket statements, derogatory statements even, about others. How many times we see this, you know, oh, the stupid karmis, or the demon scientists, or, you know, meat-eating Christian, hypocritical, you know, or the foolish New Age people, or, you know, the Gaudiya Math people that didn't follow Bhakti Siddhanta, or, you know, the demon-crazy democracies, or the less intelligent demigod worshippers, or the fallen devotees that don't, you know, come for Mangal Arati, or Oh, so many ways, so many ways. You know, we look down our nose, you know, those who don't go out to preach and just stay in the temple to ring the bells, or, you know, those women that are less intelligent, or those grihastas that are fallen. I mean, we've seen all of these things expressed, you know, and in so many ways, and, you know, maybe very subtly over periods of time, these like weeds of arrogance can grow, and it suffocates our devotional creeper. And yes, of course, Srila Prabhupada, he did use very strong terms to denounce ignorance. He did do that, but he could do that because he had realized knowledge, and he had genuine love, genuine compassion for all living entities. But if we don't have that, if we don't have that kind of love, and we want to use these kind of heavy statements to smash people, it can be dangerous. It can be dangerous. If we speak with a sense of superiority to others, if we think I'm smarter, I'm better than others, or my position makes me better than you, if we're looking down at others, if we're setting ourselves above and apart, and if I have this very strong need to be right, and, you know, just to be better, we have to see, you know, look at ourselves and see, this is arrogance. And this will definitely slow down our process of progress, of spiritual development. So, you know, this kind of know-it-all syndrome, it can be dangerous. And we have to be so careful. And Srila Prabhupada said, spiritual life is like the razor's edge. You can get a nice shave, or you can cut your throat. So we have to be careful to remember, we must remember that whatever we know, it doesn't belong to us. It's a gift. It's a gift from Guru and Krishna. I mean, 5 minutes ago, we were just in the same boat as everyone else, down in the gutter. And we are simply made of mercy. And Krishna can give it, and if he sees we don't use it properly, he also can take it away. So, you know, true spiritual consciousness, it leads to humility and gratitude, not pride or an attitude of entitlement or an inflated idea of our own intelligence. You know, so it's very important to watch our attitudes. Really, nobody likes a know-it-all. Anyway, Krishna consciousness is a deep, deep ocean of emotion and love, a whole nother world, a whole nother realm. But, you know, and we may have such a desire to want to dive deep into that, you know, to experience that. But we often find ourselves standing on the shore, barely able to tip, you know, just dip our little toe into that ocean. And we will be stuck there as long as we continue to make offenses and as long as we have an arrogant attitude. I'm speaking from my personal realization. 50 years, I'm still standing on the edge. I hope the next generations will do better, learn the lessons quicker. And in any case, I don't want to sound too negative, as, you know, there are a lot of good things came out of this, you know, humbling decade, challenging decade. A lot of positive initiatives began during these times to help devotees to stay on track, to improve I think around this time there was, Japa Reform book came out, and a reading reform, and there was emphasis on guru reform. There was emphasis on doing better. And there were a lot of positive efforts to reform and to improve ourselves. And just in general, to a push to go deeper. And although I've mentioned some negative ways in which we dealt with challenges, we did deal with them. And many, many devotees worked very hard to keep things afloat, and it required a lot of work and austerity and dedication and a lot of cooperative working to protect the movement physically and philosophically and legally. And just no doubt in the future there will be many more challenges. And I just pray that the next generations, they gain the skills and and also have the commitment and dedication that will be required to keep things moving forward institutionally, personally, emotionally, spiritually. It's hard work. But it is also filled with the joy of helping to push forward Mahaprabhu's mission. And that is most rewarding. There isn't anything better to strive for in this world. So I apologize that this may be turned into a way too long kind of self-help talk or something, but I hope there's something useful in it. That we try to learn. We try to learn from the things we've done so that we can improve. We all need to improve more and more, day by day, minute by minute, year by year, decade after decade. There'll be new things to learn. Anyway, thank you for listening. Hare Krishna.